Welcome back to another episode of the NCAA Track and Field Show. I'm your host, Gordon Mack, and today we're going to talk about relays. This week is a big relay weekend. I got the Drake Relays going down in Iowa and the Penn Relays going down in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, my hometown. It's going to be live on FloTrack. I can't wait. I'll be on the ground all weekend long, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, bringing you guys all the action. Make sure you check it out live on FloTrack, the Penn Relays. So in honor of the relays, let's talk about the latest rankings for the relays. Now, unfortunately, we don't get the DMRs and the 4x8s and the 4x miles at NCAAs. We just get the 4x1 and 4x4, but I got those rankings for you. But we also dab a little into those DMRs, what I think about the 4x miles, 4x8s. But before we get to that, let's check out the rankings. Again, go over to our website. Go to this latest NCAA rankings, and here you go. These are our rankings. It's pretty self-explanatory. Georgia men have boomed up from third to first, but if you look at this, it doesn't really matter because look at that. 39 points for Georgia, 38 for Florida, 38 for A&T, 37 for Oregon. They're basically all tied. If you're separated by 1 point, that's the odds of that being exact is just, it's not going to happen. So basically, four-way tie up top. Texas moved down to fifth. That's notable. On the women's side, Florida holding on to that top spot with 75 points. Texas women, 71. There are 1-2. Big separation between the top two and the Kentuckys and A&Ms. So two-woman team battle going on the women's side. On the men's side, it's wide open. No one's getting to 40 points yet. We're going to have to wait for conference championships to go throw down to see what type of marks some of these top SEC, Pac-12 schools have to really formulate what the men's rankings are. But we got also the individuals, right? So check it out. We got the sprint rankings. We got distance. We got field. And if you click over on the more button, boom, we got relays. Relays rankings. And let's kind of break down what we got here. On the men's side, we're looking at the Florida men with the top 4x1, A&T second, Oregon, surprisingly, third. They ran really well at the Oregon Relays. That's our top three on the 4x1 for men. 4x4 for men, again, Florida. Florida holding on. They broke the collegiate record. They ran 2:58. They're going to be number one. Texas A&M 2, Georgia 3, and then the rest go forth. Women's rankings, Texas women 4x1, number 1. LSU, number 2. Kentucky, number 3. They got Abby Steiner on that anchor. LSU, they got Ophelia on that anchor. Texas, they just got, Julian Alfred. Very good sprinters across the top on the women's side for Texas, LSU, and Kentucky. And then 4x4, Texas holding the fort there. A&M and Arkansas second and third. But if you notice this, on the women's side, it's looking for a Texas sweep. And on the men's side, it's looking at a Gators sweep. Very similar teams in the 4x1s, in the 4x4s, which makes sense because a lot of times these coaches, when they train their sprinters, they train them to run the 4x4. So you could be a 1-2 woman or a 1-2 man, and you're still going to have to throw down a 43-second split or 51-point split for your team. So that's why it's a lot of overlap on the 4x4 and the 4x1. So let's see how I got to these rankings. But really, let's just see, what's the data you need to go off of, right? How are we going to decide who has the best relay? Is it too early? Is it too late to figure that out? Well, I went through the T-first, the descending order list, and this is what we found out. So let's start with the 4x1s. You'll notice here in the 4x1s, these are the top three marks that have been thrown down so far in 2022. Florida, 38.4, A&T, 38.6, Oregon, 38.8. And then on the women's side, Texas, 42.4, Kentucky, 42.4, LSU, 42.6. Now, one thing you'll notice about this is, the top times that have been run this year were all run at the Texas Relays on March 23rd. There has yet to be a improvement on the top 4x1 times since then. And that makes you think, what does that mean about the 4x1? Will Texas and Florida ever get back to their form right off of indoors? You have to think maybe they just were hot off of indoors and be able to ride that momentum in the Texas Relays, but they haven't been able to catch that. What I think Texas and Florida, respectively, both they got their marks out of the way, and they haven't really putting a focus on their relays since. They haven't been working on trying to PB in their 4x1. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see these 4x1 marks get shattered at conferences, get shattered again at regionals or prelims, and then ultimately probably get shattered the third time at NCAAs. Like, I believe that Florida's 38-47 and Texas is 42-42. Those probably both will be the fourth fastest times in the NCAA when it's all said and done. That's what I think is going to happen. And you look at these teams, like Florida, you got an Olympian and Fambula on that anchor. Texas women, they got Alfred and Flannel. Like, Kentucky's got Steiner, LSU, O'Feely. Like, there's some good names. I mean, look at North Carolina A&T. Got Randolph Ross, Daniel Stokes, Javante Harding. He's the 200-meter indoor champ. It is stacked names across the board for both the men and women in the 4x1. And I really think it's gonna be hard to really project who's going to have the best 4x1 because, you know, there's times when we thought Houston was going to run away with it, and then they dropped the baton at prelims, and then it's all she wrote. So the difference between 38-4 and 38-8 and 42-4 and 42-6 is really negligible right now. I mean, if anything, we probably should be ranking more based off of how they finished at NCAAs last year. But the problem with that is there are some athletes who ran last year who aren't this year. So it's very complicated to figure out the 4x1. But what I'm trying to get out of this is these times are going to look slow 1 month from now. Mark my words. All right, moving on to the 4x4. Top three marks that have been thrown down for the men, Florida, A&M, and Georgia. And for the women, that's right here, Florida, A&M, and Georgia. These are top marks. Ignore the red for now. For the women, it's Texas, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Arkansas has a third best 4x4, and it's from a mark from indoors. So that goes to show you that Arkansas is waiting to light one up if their best time so far is third in the country, and it's from a mark at SEC indoors back in February. So look out for them probably improving their time come SEC outdoors. But what I want to do is you see the top three times for men, Florida, A&M, Georgia, and for women, Texas A&M, Arkansas. In the red, what I did was I went through every 400-meter performance, indoor and outdoor, and I found every team's top 400-meter performances, and I summed them up. And when you go purely based off of season best combined times, the three best teams for men were Florida, A&M, and Iowa. And for the women, it was A&M, Arkansas, and Texas. And if you notice, for the women, it's the same three teams. Now, the times are going to be slower because, again, these times are all individual open times, so there's no running start. There's no, chasing someone down on the backstretch. There's none of that. So the times are just naturally going to sum up to be slower because relay splits are just naturally faster. But if you notice, the three women's teams are the same. A&M, Arkansas, Texas, same. Texas A&M, and Arkansas. So that basically shows you that there's probably not a hidden team out there that's really going to mix up with these top three because if we're looking at season's best, the same top three stay. However, on the men's side, while the top three times are Florida, A&M, Georgia, there's a team, when you take their season's best, is third, and that is the Iowa Hawkeyes. And they do have McKeever. He's a freshman. He's been running out of his mind, around 44 seconds. Iowa's probably the sneaky team to look out for because they haven't put together a perfect 4x4, but they have the individuals that on a good day, probably at Big Tens, probably at the prelims, they might be able to flirt with the 3 flat and, challenge Florida at NCAAs. So that's kind of a breakdown of the 4x4s and 4x1s. But, these times, it's still early. It's April. But what I really look forward to when it comes to Penn Relays is the off relays, the relays that we don't get to see that often. We're talking 4x8s, we're talking DMRs, we're talking 4x miles. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the entries, and I'm just going to tell you who's going to win. I'm going to tell you who's going to win the distance races. So 4x8, 4x-mile, DMR for the men and women. And I'm going to go 6 for 6. Rapid fire. This is my first time looking at the entries, and I'm just going to tell you from the bottom of my heart who I think is going to win. So let's start with the men. I'm just going to look at the entries. I'm going to look at them for 4 seconds, and I'm going to tell you the winner. Men. Ooh, Georgia, Ole Miss. Got to go Ole Miss. Ole Miss. Ole Miss is the best. I just got it with Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to win the 4x8. All right, let's go 4 by mile. Ready? Look. Ooh, Wisconsin, they ran good. Texas is good. They're by themselves. Georgetown, Villanova. I'm going with Texas. I think Texas. Nope. Can I change my mind? No, I'm going to stay with Texas. I'm going with Texas. They're only here for that one race. I'm going with Texas. Texas for the win. Okay, last but not least, DMR. Wisconsin again, Ole Miss, Indiana, Arkansas. Ooh, I kind of want to pick Arkansas. I really want to pick Arkansas. But Ole Miss is going to have Mario Garcia-Romo. I got to go Ole Miss then. I thought Ole Miss would win indoors. They kind of fluttered there. So I'm going Ole Miss winning the DMR, Ole Miss winning the 4x8, and Texas winning the 4 by mile. Time for the women. Here we go. Rapid fire, 4x8. Who's going to win? BYU, Indiana, Penn State, Villanova, Ohio State. I'm going with BYU. BYU's going to win the women's 4x8. I believe they had, the runner-up in the indoor 800. They have a bunch of good 800-meter runners. So I'm going with BYU on the women's side. All right, women's 4x15. Ooh, this is the hardest one. Ooh, Villanova, NC State, Ole Miss is good. BYU's freaking good. Arkansas is good. It's between Arkansas and NC State. I'm going with Tui Mania. Why not? Caitlin Tui, fresh off her incredible 5K, which makes her maybe a potential 10K, 5K doubler if she wins a 10K eventually. I don't know, but probably not. But I'm going NC State for the win, anchored by Caitlin Tui in the 4x15. All right, last but not least, women's DMR. Okay, no NC State. No few other teams. Okay, we got Ole Miss, BYU, Virginia, Indiana, Georgetown. I think we're going wild card. We're going wild card. Wild card. We're going UVA. UVA is going to win the women's distance medley relay. I'm going with it. I believe in them. UVA just had a really good, I think Mia Barrett. Let's check her out. Let's look up performance list. I think she ran the fastest time so far this year in the 1500, if I'm not mistaken. Let's try to find that event, 1500. You guys are watching this in real time. Yeah, Mia Barnett, Virginia, freshman. She went 4:11. I like my pick already. 4:33 mile, 4:11, 1500. Virginia women, they're winning the DMR at Penn Relays, according to me. Anyway, watch the relays live on FloTrack Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's going to be awesome. There's also some top individual races. You get all the action live on Flo. Peyton Jordan's this weekend. That's going to be crazy with all the fast distance guys. Stanford's going to be there. Florida State's going to be there. It's going to be great. So check all the action live on FloTrack. Check out the rankings. I got my sprint rankings, my distance, my teams. Go to the homepage. FloTrack is where it's at. We out.